gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the universe. Here, in this great hall of the Signal Watch, are the most powerful forces of good ever assembled. Join us as we discuss all manner of topics across the multiverse of comic books, history, creators, storylines, movies, and more. The Signal Watch podcast presents Kryptonian Thought Beast, a comics podcast series dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Signal Watch. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Steens, and with me today is
Danny Horn from Superheroes Every Day.
Danny, welcome back. If anyone is possible, I can't imagine you didn't listen to the Fantastic Four episodes, but if you haven't, Danny, could you talk a little bit about Superheroes Every Day?
Sure. Yeah, I feel like they must have listened to the Fantastic Four because they're fan favorites, as I understand. Instant classics, I believe they said. Superheroes Every Day is the history of superhero movies, one movie at a time. Right now, I am writing a bunch about Superman 2 and soon going on to Swamp Thing, which is going to be a whole other experience.
Ooh, yes. I am very, very much looking forward to that.
Yeah.
You've also been dumping in some, I almost said episodes, posts about comics that were occurring at that time, which is a lot of fun. I picked up a lot of those issues as like dime and dollar issues over the past few years. So I always know what you're talking about, but a lot of times it's been a while since I revisited those issues.
Yeah. So what I'm doing like in the blog is looking at, for each movie, looking at a whole bunch of things about how like the writing and the acting and the directing and production decisions that they made and kind of the history of it. And also including like what was happening in the comics while they were making this movie. So it takes me a while to get through each movie. I think it's been like 8-9 months and I'm on the second movie, which is Superman 2. But yeah, so it's really fun.
Well, if you guys haven't checked it out, it is Superheroes Every Day. Super easy to find on the interwebs. And absolutely do that. It's one of my great. I'm not going to work right now. I'm going to read Danny's site. Get my escapes. But today we are following up on another Fox entry in the superhero movie realm.
Canon.
Yeah. So we're doing the movie New Mutants. That is technically a 2020 release.
Yeah. And so like we talked the last episodes we were on, we talked about the 2005 Fantastic Four and the 2015 Fantastic Four, which we were going to do all in one episode, but then it turned out that we talked so much that we turned it into 2 episodes. And so Ryan said, so I'm like, okay, let's do like the New Mutants and Dark Phoenix. And Ryan was like, how about we just do one movie? So my understanding is that I'm going to talk about the New Mutants for 2 hours.
Go for it.
That's how I understand what's happening.
I was watching it Friday night again, and I was like, I know I've got stuff to say about this, but I'm going to have to kind of lean on Danny to lead this conversation.
Good, I've got it. It's a weird ass movie.
So we talked a little bit on DMs on Twitter a bit about like you were not a New Mutants guy back in the day.
No, in the 80s I did not. I've always been like a big comics guy, but varying stuff. And so in the 80s, Marvel was trash. Like Marvel was like the X-Men, like Wolverine and the Punisher were like the big characters, and they were just like super violent. And so I was more like into the Vertigo books and into like DC books and kind of more of the comedy. So yeah, I didn't read. The thing that really got me into the X-Men for the first time was Avengers versus X-Men. Was like when Brian Michael Bendis was writing it.
Oh wow, that one. Not the. There was an Avengers versus X-Men in like 88 or something like that. So I thought that's what you were referring to.
No, it's like the 2012 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that got me into X-Men for the first time. And so like I read all of the Brian Bendis stuff. And then kind of when he left, they got less interesting for me. But I read like the Wolverine, the one where Wolverine is running a school, I thought was really cute. So I have love for like the X-Men characters, but I don't really know very much about their history.
Okay, that's really interesting. So my X-Men was my gateway into like, I'm not just picking up a comic at the gas station like occasionally as a kid. And it was very quick. I went from like picking up a few comics at the airport to like full comic nerd by the end of summer sort of thing. and X-Men, because it was all around the period of the event called Mutant Massacre that I started reading comics. It was like right before then. And so New Mutants had been around for a while at that point. I did not read the Demon Bear saga that this movie is based on, because that took place about a year and a half or 2 years before I picked up my first issue of New Mutants. And New Mutants was basically Claremont wanting to expand what he was doing with X-Men, recognizing that Xavier, he always would say, Xavier's is a school. Like that was he had all those weird catchphrases that he would use, which I reread Demon Bear Saga last night, and you're just like, oh my God, like all of it comes flooding back to you, all his weird Claremontisms. And so he was like, right, so I'm going to actually introduce a team of like teenagers, because teenagers have plenty of drama, blah, blah, blah. Now, when they would do that, it would be one of the lighter books usually. And that was not the case with New Mutants. Like he clearly knew like teenagers have angst. Teenagers are going through things and feel things in a way that like he couldn't write Wolverine feeling things deeply, right? You know, Colossus might feel something, but he's going to deal with it as an adult. And that's not what New Mutants was. It was like people harboring secrets from each other. They're all in love with each other. Yeah. It was a soap opera, like to the nth degree. And just imagine like 90210, but like with the, you know,
but with superpowers
and much, much darker. And there was even like a rival school that like Emma Frost, who's now a whole thing, and she was played by January Jones in that one movie. She had her own school of like bad guy teens.
Of mean
yes. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. And they all kind of there was some stuff of like, well, this is clearly like Danny Moonstar's counterpart, and this is clearly Lorraine Sinclair's counterpart, and all that. And so I loved it because I was like 12, 13 when I'm getting into comics. It's the aspirational thing of them being like the 3 or 4 years older than you. And, you know, I've heard people refer to it as like, oh, my comic book girlfriend was Ilyana Rasputin or whatever. I never did the whole, like, I have a fictional girlfriend thing with comics. If I did, I probably would have been like She-Hulk or something. But it was very much my jam as I was in and then I remember I wrote my first angry letter, because Claremont had left the title, someone else had taken it over. I didn't like the direction it was going, and I was on my third page of handwritten letter, and I was like, this is insane. I'll just quit giving them 75 cents a month.
Yeah, I'll just go read something else.
Yeah, and that's what I did. I started reading The Question or something like that instead with my 75 cents. Yeah. So,
well, The Question was good. That was an upgrade.
It was amazing. Yeah, I felt like I definitely had made the right choice. but yeah, that was kind of my brief short love affair with New Mutants. So yeah,
and now they have taken that and turned it into a live action, super spectacular, big screen adventure.
Yeah, and I mean, how did you
well,
were these characters in the comics you were reading?
I only know Ileana.
Okay,
because Magic was in like all the Bendis stuff. Other than that, they are all strangers to me.
Okay.
And probably will remain so. Can I do the proverb?
Please.
I feel the need to do the proverb.
Do it.
There's an old Native American proverb that says that inside every person, there are two bears, forever locked in combat for your soul. One bear is all things good, compassion, love, trust. The other is all things evil, fear, shame, and self-destruction. And so that's the one that made this movie. Is the fear, shame, self-destruction. I'm pretty sure that's the one that got this done.
It's
this movie, like there's like a very complex production story behind it that doesn't actually make sense. So I'm gonna talk about that.
Yeah, go nuts.
So Josh Boone, who made The Fault in Our Stars in 2014, I don't know why he decided that he was going to make an X-Men movie, but he really wanted to. So he went to Fox and was working on the New Mutants. And he wanted to make it as a horror movie. And Fox, I don't know why they greenlit it, because they were very nervous about that. And so it went through like a bunch of iterations. And they got like 7 more people to contribute to the script. And at one point they had a writer's room that was supposed to like tear apart the script and put it back together. And so I don't know what like Boone ended up with ultimately as the script for his movie, but it was going to be like, instead of being like full horror with blood and everything, it was going to be more like YA focused. And then like in 2017, there was a big movie. And so they made, for the New Mutants, they made this trailer that went in more like the horror area. And apparently that did very well. Like people responded well to it. So they were like, oh, maybe we should make this like more horror. And so in 2018, they were like, okay, we're going to do reshoots. We're going to include more characters. At one point they said like, we're going to reshoot half the film. But they couldn't decide which half, which is amazing to me. And then Disney bought Fox in 2019, and they were still trying to figure out, like, are we doing reshoots on this movie? And then June 2019, Dark Phoenix came out and bombed. And so Disney really was not sure about the New Mutants. And it just kind of like dragged on and on. Like nobody really knew what was going on. Boone went and started like working on The Stand and other stuff. Beginning of 2020, I love this, that like D23, the Disney fan club, said on their website that this was part of the MCU. And they had to take it down. Disney was like, "Oh no! It's not part of the MCU. Like, don't get excited about that. We're going to keep this pretty far away." And so, like, Boone finally like completed the reshoot and released it in August 2020 into theaters, which is like the worst possible time to release a movie. And he said, "This is exactly the movie that we set out to make." And I'm like, okay, bro, if that's your coping mechanism, then fine. But like they kept talking about his vision, and it is very unclear what his vision was supposed to be.
I kind of got, when I heard they're going to make this a horror movie, from kind of what I knew about the Demon Bear stuff. And most of that I knew, I'd read as like parts of character synopses in a Marvel role-playing game supplement for these random ass characters that were in like my Mutant Mayhem book or whatever it was called. And that was because there was a cop and a nurse that appear in the comics, because the story's entirely different. The two have nothing to do with each other in any way, shape, or form, other than there is a bear. But the bear serves completely different functions. It's I think it's actually better in the movie, which the
movie has a hard time figuring out what the bear is about.
Well, the comic when they get around, I was
there are
waiting.
kind of like several. They have several takes on the bear.
Yeah, well, that may be better than the take on the bear in the comic, which is just he's a demon bear.
Right.
Which I was just like, well, that's deeply unsatisfying when you know anything about Danny's powers and kind of how they deal with it in the movie.
Yeah.
But they're in the comic, I'll just do a really quick synopsis.
Please do.
They're coming off of this tangle with the rich, snotty other school of mutants. And Danny has decided she's going to go into the snow without talking to him. Professor X is like somewhere else. He's not around at the school that weekend. And she goes and actually confronts the demon bear. Like there's very little preamble. It's just appears in front of her, and she's becoming friends with Magic at this time, with Ilyana. And she's been fighting demon bears in the danger room to prep. And then she goes out there and she in fact fights the demon bear. She thinks she's won. And then they hear a terrible scream and go out there, and she's basically been almost mauled to death. And they rush her to the hospital. While the doctors are working on her, the New Mutants basically stand guard outside in case the demon bear comes back. Somehow they know it's coming. And then they fight the demon bear on the psychic realm, which was a big thing in X Comics at the time. And then it's over. And then one of the Morlocks who can heal people shows up and fixes Danny, and everything's done. And that's it. Like, it has a real trapped, like we're trapped in the hospital. There's a monster coming. So I can kind of see the horror movie aspect.
That's the angle that they took on this.
Yeah. And the art's by Bill Sienkiewicz, however you pronounce it. And
I don't pronounce that. I asked other people to do it for me.
And so the art's like completely crazy. So it's really only worth it to read for the Bill Sienkiewicz art. And other from that, it's kind of forgettable, not particularly great, and kind of racist, to be honest.
So that is that all comes across in the movie. This seems like the perfect adaptation of that story then.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The theme of the movie is that everyone is terrible at doing anything. Like, we can get into it, but like there is not a single thing that a character does successfully in the entire movie, which I feel like is a pretty clear metaphor for how they made it. Like, nobody knows what their talent is. They don't know how to use their talent properly. And that is how they made this movie.
Okay.
Don't you think? Like, it's...
Yeah.
They just didn't know. And so,
it's so if you've not seen the movie, the South Coast Media plot synopsis is that Danny Moonstar is a young Native American woman who is running away from a tornado or some sort of force, and her father hides her in a tree, in the base of a tree, and then he's murdered by something, and then she wakes up and she's in this hospital. There's very few characters in this thing. It's very clearly an abandoned hospital because it's also the set / very real abandoned hospital that they use for Shutter Island. And there are... And
that's it. End of movie. That's the end of synopsis, basically.
There's 4 other mutants there.
They have weird experiences. They get pissed off, and it's not the kind of place that they were told that it is.
Yeah.
I feel like we have to kind of just walk people through it.
Go for it.
Because no, they have not seen it. Like, if this episode is aimed at people who have actually seen the New Mutants, like, that's a select group of people. So I feel like we gotta go through this like step by step.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So Danny is like the opening, as you said. Danny like is on Native American reservation. There's some kind of big nighttime tragedy happening, and she hides, and like everybody, her father and everyone that she knows gets killed. And then she wakes up in Spooky Hospital, where she's chained to a bed,
right,
and alone, and trying to figure out what's going on. And the creepy Dr. Reyes comes in, and who is like the antagonist of the movie, and then just like gives her the news. Like, there was a tornado that destroyed everything in your reservation. Your father, literally everyone that you know, is dead. And then Danny goes through the 5 stages of grief lightning round. Like, denial, nope. Anger, no. Bargaining, nope. Like, depression, she looks kind of uneasy for a scene, if that counts. Like, her grief mostly happens when we're not looking. Like, she's on the severed floor, and she has no connection to those feelings at all. But now she's just like in a prison hospital room, and she has to stay there until she's not a danger anymore.
Yeah.
And then, like, after that night, so in this scary hospital, like, they're being monitored all the time, and we see a lot of like monitors and things that are like testing her, and they say like psionic, they're like measuring her psionic energy and stuff, but like, we don't really know what her power is. She just, like, Dr. Reyes just says, like, you're a mutant, you have to deal with it, and now we're going to help you figure out like what your power is and how it all works. And so, Ryan, like, I'm going to count to 3. There's 6 characters in this movie. Like, my question is, like, how can you have a movie with 6 characters that has 6 annoying characters in it? But like, I'm going to count to 3, and we're both going to say the name of the only character that we like in this movie. I'm going to do like 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to say it at the same time.
Okay.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Ileana.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
she's
Anya Taylor-Joy is a good actor. It does not hurt. She's cute as a button, and they actually put some energy into writing her character, who acts nothing how the character was in the comics, which may be good.
It's real hard to say exactly like how they've written her here. She's kind of mean girl. At least she starts out very mean girl. But basically, like, she has jokes, which is good. She's the one character who like makes jokes and makes fun of people, and so she makes fun of Danny for a while. So they go, like, the next morning, then you meet all these people, which, Brian, from the comics. I really don't. But they go in. There's Danny shows up. And there's a group therapy session going on, which is the only thing that happens in this hospital. It's like the one thing, and they never do it for very long. And so she comes in and she meets, like, okay, so these are people that I don't know. So it's like Rain.
So Rain is Wolfsbane in the comics, and her power in the comics, which is reflected accurately here, is she is incredibly Irish.
Yes. That's a really good description of what she does in the movie.
But that's what she is. So Chris Claremont was kind of famous in the comics for like overdoing all of his, like, he would write out phonetically everybody's accents, which when you're 12 helps. It seems ridiculous when you're 46 and reading the comics, as I was last night. But it turns, basically, she has 3 forms. She can be her girl self, she can be a like werewolf looking thing, and she can be a full wolf. Right. And she has, in any of those forms, she has night vision and like various other, she can smell things and hear things and whatever. And maybe some light psychic abilities that allows her to like have psychic connections with people.
Like dogs do.
Yes.
Yeah, she's got dog. Yeah.
Dog powers.
Dog powers. Dog.
She's Muttley from Catch That Pigeon.
Yeah, and so that is the way that. Yeah, I mean, here it's not a wolf. She just turns into a dog.
I don't think they could bring a wolf safely on the set,
but they do. Like, that's true. But I believe she's the only one that does anything useful at any point with her powers. Pretty much it's her.
Yeah.
And it's the one who can turn into a dog.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is kind of in the they probably, so in the comics at this point, and I didn't read this way as a kid, but which they do in the movie. She had a psychic connection to Mirage, who is Danny. And I didn't read it this way as a kid, but as an adult, I was reading it going, oh, they were supposed to be lovers. Like I didn't get that really? At all.
Oh, that's in the comics? I thought they would have made that up for.
I think they probably were. I mean, in the movie, they're explicit about it.
Yeah.
I think in the eventually they had Rain come out of the closet in the comics. I think I have heard that. I quit reading all of this stuff decades ago, but that is what I have heard in the intervening years. I don't know about Danny anything. I don't know. I don't know if she's even alive or dead or whatever in the comics. Not that it matters in X-Men, but
that's right. And so that's a nice thing in this movie is that Rain and Danny. So they don't use the like superhero names at all. They don't have these superhero names yet. This is them just starting out. And Rain and Danny have actually like a very sweet little lesbian relationship, and they've got some nice romance scenes, and it kind of like builds up, and then they kiss each other.
It was the only I felt emotionally honest part of this movie.
Yeah, they're very sweet. And Ilyana's so Ilyana is, I guess, Russian, angry. She's got a puppet, a dragon puppet that she calls Lockheed that she talks to, which like I kind of find endearing, because she uses it to make terrible like fun of people through Lockheed. So
Ilyana, first of all, is Colossus's sister, which they don't ever bring up. But that was supposed to be the connection. So like Ilyana and Kitty Pryde were like super good pals because they were closer to the same age. And Kitty was dating Colossus when I was reading the comics. And anyway, that's kind of neither here nor there. Lockheed in the comics belonged to Kitty, really. So that was kind of a weird thing that they attached the dragon to Ilyana, but makes more sense since she's popping in and out of the limbo realm, I guess, for her to have a little dragon floating around with her.
Yeah. But we mostly don't see her do that. We mostly just see her
with a hand puppet,
being mean with a hand puppet.
Yeah.
Which I like. And then who else? And then there's Sam
Guthrie, Cannonball,
who we see like banged up with like his arm in a sling, and he's constantly got like bruises on his face. And so I don't know if he's useful at all in the X-Men.
So in New Mutants, they went on an arc with him of like he really didn't know how to use his powers super well, and he was called Cannonball because he basically he'd become invulnerable when he flew, so he would just hurl himself at things.
Yeah.
And that's in the comics. If you read the Demon Bear saga, he's still because he's the oldest, they also kind of put him in charge of everybody else.
Yeah.
And so he's the team leader, which is a big thing, of course, in comics, which doesn't make any sense when you grow up and go, there's no such thing as an actual team leader this way, unless you're in a professional environment. And
he definitely is not in this movie.
He definitely is not. It's all fairly comics accurate, including the over the top West Virginia or Kentucky accent that he's got. Yeah. Chris Claremont's like phonetically written out, stuff was all trying to be very regionally specific.
Yeah.
And him kind of not knowing what he's doing and being insecure, because of course back then they had thought bubbles and all that for people to go, I don't know what I'm doing. And
which here that's like all of the dialogue.
Well, yeah. And frankly, that's a lot of the New Mutants dialogue from this era. Is it's all teens being insecure and kind of fronting like we know we have to do a thing, and then their inner thoughts are, oh shit, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
Which when you're 13, you're like, yeah, this reads very
That's
true.
For real. Yeah.
So Sunspot is Berto.
Yeah.
He's a lot nicer here than he was in the comics.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was, because he's supposed to be like the child of billionaires or something.
Yeah.
And
they do some of that. They do some of that in this movie.
Yeah, he just kind of always like didn't in the comics was more willing to be more of just a dick all the time. Yeah. They softened it eventually, but he because it didn't make sense for him to still be around, honestly, after a while.
Oh, really?
He was going to be that much of a dick.
Yeah.
They had a whole spin-off called Fallen Angels. I won't get into it. Right. So he his powers are not his powers, though. He has the powers of a character named Magma. Liquid
oh, really?
Magma. Yeah.
What are Sunspot's character powers?
He has light Superman power of he absorbs sunlight and
and that makes him
super strong and kind of invulnerable-ish. Yeah.
No, this guy, he turns into fire. He's like Human Torchy.
Yeah, and he was using the powers. They show him having some super strength at one scene. He's like banging on some doors. But Magma
does not break through them.
No,
he bangs.
Yeah, he's not that strong in the comics. He's like kind of stronger than your average bear sort of thing.
Yeah.
Magma was a girl whose real name I can't remember. The thing I remember is supposedly she lived in an offshoot of the Greek civilization that was actually hidden in the Amazon. Something. It was very
confusing. Okay. Yeah.
But she was never particularly well written or important. So I'm not surprised they collapsed them into one thing. And then is there anybody else? That's it.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, there's 5 kids, Danny, and then 4 other kids. Uh-huh. And Berto works for me in this because Henry Zaga is just gorgeous.
Oh, he's a handsome dude.
Yeah, in a way that's like the world has already decided that he's gorgeous, and now we're just letting you in on that. But like, you don't actually have a choice about how to feel. It's just a thing, and you just weren't informed. So he's beautiful in the whole thing. And there are several scenes where like basically every time he uses his powers, he burns all his clothes off.
That's right. Yeah.
Which I think is hilarious and absolutely like the correct deployment for Henry Zaga in the movie.
He in the comics, of course, he has an X suit or whatever that. Right. Yeah. But yeah, I think they made him a lot more fun in the movie. Yeah. Like his kind of hot-headedness and kind of snobbishness they made kind of charming, or maybe that's just Henry Zaga.
Yeah. It is kind of like he's a jerk. He's basically a jerk. And he and they say like, yeah, he's from the richest family in Brazil, which I guess is very rich. And then he talks about that sometimes. But it's charming because he's gorgeous. And he actually doesn't really say anything. That's one weird thing about Berto is we constantly see him doing the dishes and doing the laundry. Like he's the only person who does anything.
I had so many questions about that. Yeah. Because he's also the only one who thinks he's there voluntarily, which also doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So he's just always washing. He doesn't cook. We don't see him cook, but several times we see him just washing dishes.
Can we talk about the logistics of this place? Because this is where the whole movie falls apart.
That is the number one thing that we need to discuss is, as a hospital, meditation center, whatever it is they are trying to do, it is not successful at doing that at all.
The idea that they sell these kids on is you're here for your own protection because, and they use this fairly decent comparison of like baby rattlesnakes are more toxic than adult rattlesnakes because they can't control how much venom they deploy, but which is not actually accurate, but whatever. They are more toxic. That right? Yeah.
Oh, that's awful. I feel ashamed of myself for believing that.
No, it is true that they are more toxic, but it's not because like snakes learn. It's not like they go to snake school.
That's true. That, you know what? I feel like I I realized that everything that everybody says in this movie is bullshit, except I now realize, except for that line, which I believed like a child.
But I was watching this movie the first time, and Ilyana clearly knows they're trapped
there. That
is
a sentence that so few people can say. I was watching this movie for the first time. You and I are in a very select group of the club of people who have not just watched it once, but have watched it multiple times.
Oh my God. Yeah. But they know that Rain and Ilyana know they're trapped. Sam may or may not, but he's not trying to get out. He's been told that if he leaves, the police will come for him.
Right.
Berto seems to think he's at some sort of shitty resort. But one where they make him do the dishes, which I did not get. And the laundry. So you have that going on. And then Danny, new there, so has nothing kind of voiced. But they're using her as kind of the POV character to kind of get introduced. But those things don't add up, and there's only 5 kids, and they would certainly be talking to each other about why are you here, and oh my God, there's a magic force field around the place. Apparently, we can't leave.
Yeah,
and if you go out at night and you see any rain, it creates a magical vista above us and whatever.
Right.
But we don't know how
sparky red barrier.
Yeah, but we don't know how food is getting in, which would have to be happening. We don't see any staff to clean or do laundry or any of the things that would have to happen to keep this place basically going.
Yeah. Dr. Reyes is literally the only. There's the 5 kids and there's Dr. Reyes. Yeah. And that is the entire staff. There's no one else in the movie.
Yeah.
And all she does really, like, she doesn't do anything. The only thing that she does is have these like therapy meditation sessions where she just scolds them. Like she's just scolding everyone.
It's all negative reinforcement. Yeah.
Through the entire movie. Everything she says is just like, you're doing that wrong.
Yeah.
So it's so crazy. Like, if the idea is that this is supposed to be like a cool place, this is like a safe place where you can figure out your powers in a safe environment. And so we're just like a chill hospital meditation center to help you figure that out. Like, stop stressing them out all the time by locking them up in completely unnecessary jail cells. Like, put up a poster, get a plant, organize some activities. Like, it's just these bare, big, empty rooms. There's no classes. That, like, the therapy sessions, if they happen at all, they're always just on the verge of wrapping up when we see them, and they have nothing else planned. So the kids are just like at a loose end, doing nothing.
Well, and then Reyes comes the pitch and, was
does her scolding therapy. Like, Reyes just comes by and does her like scolding therapy, and that's literally the only thing that she does.
Well, the pitch was apparently Breakfast Club meets One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Mm-hmm.
Which I can see, like, okay, so that was the angle you took. But from just a practicality standpoint, like, that Nurse Ratched wasn't the only person. Like, the high school in Breakfast Club had Carl the janitor rolling around. Like, there were other things going on. And the thing that irritates me the most about it is, did you ever watch Legion on FX?
I love Legion.
Did it same idea 1,000 times better.
Oh yeah.
Like 1,000 times better. And
because there's interesting stuff happening in that location.
Because it was an interesting thing to watch.
So here there's nothing to do, and Dr. Reyes is just furious at them for doing literally anything.
Yeah.
Like, in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, at least they gave them like sedatives and playing cards. Like, there was something that they were allowed to do. And here, like, it's like the 2015 Fantastic Four, like, when they're in this is now a reference that only you and I would understand. When they were like kept in the government bunker and tested and stuff, where, like, if you want these people, if the idea is to get these people to feel comfortable in this space, give them some stuff that feels like a real place. This feels like a prison. Like they have the kids sleep in like these solitary, clearly like prison rooms with like a cot in it and literally nothing else. And they sleep there, except when they do something bad, in which case they're taken to solitary, which is they locked in a room which has one cot and nothing. Like there's no difference.
Yeah.
They treat solitary like that's a problem. Like it's exactly the same as your bedroom. I don't know what they're talking about.
I was so confused by that.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, Ilyana's one power,
I know,
is that she's a teleporter.
I know.
It didn't make
Why
any
doesn't
sense.
she teleport out?
Just leave.
So they have a scene. So they have a scene where like, and this is probably the first time that you realize that Ilyana is actually fun. Is that like Ilyana is supposed to show around and she doesn't care, and she's got for like funny Russian accent, and she's like, here's the dorm and there's the chapel if you believe in that kind of bullshit, and maybe try, hey Danny, how about you try and escape? And like Danny, and like the gates are open and Danny starts to run, and Ilyana's like, run, new girl, run. And Danny just like runs and runs and runs, and then she bashes into a force field, which is the dome that's over the school, and like hits her nose, and her nose is bleeding, which is terrible but actually funny. And then Ilyana's there, and she's just like cracking up over like causing someone pain, so that's fun. So the whole idea is that like Dr. Reyes can cast these force fields that keep them all in this terrible institution. But like Ilyana can teleport.
In the comics, she doesn't just teleport. She can pass through both time and space. So she could go 10 years in the past, 15 years in the future. Like it.
And we see her all the time, like getting dragged by Dr. Reyes just says, you're going into solitary.
Yeah.
And then it cuts. And the next thing that we see is her like pushing Ilyana into the room. And Ilyana's like, no, don't put me in solitary. It's like, how did she drag you there? You have a magic sword that you can create and bring people to hell.
Yeah.
And apparently Dr. Reyes by herself, like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, like if they wanted to take you someplace you didn't want to go, you have large orderlies.
Yeah.
Who grab you and do that. It is just this one lady. This one mean lady. Yeah. It doesn't make sense.
Like in the comics set them up to have various things that you knew were like these various Claremontisms. Like there was something called a mutant inhibitor band.
Yeah.
Which they could have introduced. Like she slaps that on Ilyana without her realizing, or they all have to wear one.
Like power dampeners.
Yeah.
In like I think modern Marvel comics, they talk about power. Like that's how you put like villains into prison on the raft, is that they have power dampeners.
100%. And
there's nothing on these people.
And all they had to do was like say all these actors have to wear the same matching bracelet for the next 10 weeks.
And they're trying to take it off and they can't.
And I don't understand why that wasn't a thing. I don't understand. Like they could have done so many different things that they could have pulled from the comics. And I understand Reyes is from the comics. Mr. Sinister was in the comics. That they all think they're waiting to get sent up to the X-Men. That's what they think. And the movie tries to trick you to believe that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, Dr. Reyes says, like, I have these employers I have these superiors, and once you're done here, you're going to go to their facility.
Yeah.
And it's implied that it's Professor X, and you're going to become an X-Man.
Yeah. And it's Mr. Sinister, and you're going to become a Marauder. And I also heard they were going to cast John Hamm as Mr. Sinister, which made me just laugh.
That was a thing. Yeah.
Imagining him with the toilet paper cape, like proudly marching around. Mr. Sinister, I think, is the literally worst designed supervillain in all of comics. Like they clearly were not trying when they made Mr. Sinister. Like so he initially, when he first appeared, he was supposed to be someone else. Okay. Oh yeah. Have you never looked at Mr. Sinister? He looks like a mime bodybuilder wearing like a toilet paper cape.
Yeah, with a little red diamond on his head.
Yeah.
Oh, it's kind of cute. Oh, Mr. Sinister. Yeah.
Just imagine John Hamm there.
I know. That would actually have been very funny.
But I mean, I'm sure that's not what they would have done for the movie, but it's not great. And
so they're just alone in this place, not doing anything. Danny considers committing suicide. And is like up on a ledge and is about to kill herself, like throw herself off the. Although it is possible, like she doesn't know her mutant power, like maybe she can bounce, so that might not do anything, even if she did throw herself off a cliff. And Rain talks her down because Rain is like the manic pixie dream girl, like she exists, manic Catholic dream girl, who exists like basically just in order to like be romantic with Danny and make her happier. And so like they come down, Danny decides, okay, I won't kill myself today. And Dr. Reyes comes along and she's like, where were you? Like nobody's to be unaccounted for ever. And it's like, dude, hire one other person.
Yeah.
To stand when all of the kids are outside, hire somebody to stand there outside. No, they don't. She doesn't do that.
Well, it's also like you have a group of teenagers in an abandoned hospital
with no activities,
and you expect for them like
to do
it's
what?
Just hilarious.
What does she want them to do?
Yeah,
very unclear. And so Sam is practicing his flying outside and is like banging himself around on things. And I feel like you need to be a lot better than that before you do it as much as you're doing it.
Well, they do kind of a Fantastic Four 2015 sort of thing where he is punishing himself because when his power manifested, he was in a coal mine in Kentucky.
Mines.
And he basically ended up killing everybody in the tunnel or something,
including his dad,
which I think is actually comics accurate if I remember correctly. Yeah.
That's dark as hell.
Oh yeah, no, New Mutants was a weird comic because it was super, super dark.
Yeah.
And he so he's punishing himself when he uses his power. It's kind of this whole S&M sort of thing they have going on with Sam. And he I mean, I kind of got what they were going for with that, but I think the problem with this movie is it's almost like if I wrote one draft of this and didn't check with anybody who had never read New Mutants to go, does this make sense?
Yeah.
Because
I think that this makes sense because it's like the one backstory plot point that they talk about over and over. The mines. Like Rain tells Danny about it, like, oh, he worked in the mines with his dad. And then there's a scene where in the laundry where he talks to Berto about like being in the mines. And then he has this like laundry room nightmare.
Yeah.
And then they go up in the attic and they're like, oh, why do you have that piece of coal? And it's like, hasn't he told you a million times that he was in the mines? And then later, like there's a scene with him just talking to Berto, and they're talking about like, are we here by choice? And he's like, oh, I never had a choice. And Berto's like, what do you mean? I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And Sam was like, oh, I never had a choice. They made me work in the mines with my dad. And I'm like, oh my God, can you have one conversation where you don't talk about working in the mine with your dad? It's like he went to CrossFit and now the only thing he can talk about is CrossFit. It's like any conversation with him, it's like, oh my God, dude, put the coal down, get over the mines. I cannot hear about it anymore.
I will say this, like, I only knew about Sam's background because of like role-playing game supplement stuff. Like he didn't talk about it in the comics.
He talks about nothing else.
Yeah. He was much more concerned with like whoever he was in love with that issue or whatever. It did not make any sense.
Yeah.
So
still, I do want to point out that Sam worked in the mines.
Yes.
With his dad.
Yes.
Didn't like it.
Yes.
It did not sit well with him. And at one point, he turned into a cannibal and killed everybody, including his dad.
Yes.
But let me tell you about Sam and the mines, because he was working. That's what the movie is like for folks who did not see the movie. It really is.
And you're right, because Berto, they basically sketch out what happened with him through an actual scene.
Right. Yeah.
After saying he's never talked about it, then they show you what happened, which is how movies are supposed to work.
Yeah.
But I still think that's a little confusing in some ways, because it also just reads as a horror movie scene.
That scene is complicated. Well, let's get to that.
Okay.
But like, actually, like, I want to talk about control.
Yes.
Control. Control. There's a scene now where they're like, so now we've met all the kids, and Dr. Reyes is doing another of her like 2-minute therapy sessions where they are all sitting cross-legged on the ground and like pretending to meditate. And Dr. Reyes' therapy is that they just meditate, and she says the word control, control, control. She says it 6 times. Control and control. And it's just like, oh my God, that is not how you learn to control things. Is somebody just saying the word control at you? Like, Berto, by the way, has already learned how to control it because he doesn't use it even when he is in mortal danger.
Yeah.
He's got that pretty controlled. Rain, I feel like, only turns into a dog when she feels like it. She's got that down. Like, for all of these people, it's a choice.
Hold on 1 second. My dog has decided his presence is needed and is shoving his face like in mine.
You gotta do.
Go lay down. Go. 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 No, there's nothing over there for you. You just need to go over there.
Dude, you need to control that dog. He heard us talking about the dog. Tell him control. Tell him
control, Andre. So, yeah.
That's how you do it. That's how you train a dog.
It's there's no such thing like the X-Men comics also present the idea of the danger room, which I think the Hellions also had. And I don't understand why they didn't think to do something similar of showing them being
trained in any way.
Like, we're going to give you negative stimulus, which would trigger your powers, and you're going to control them. Yeah. Sitting in a room that's totally chill. And
it's not, and having someone say the word control to you.
Yeah, and two-fifths of the kids are not playing ball at all.
Yeah.
Which she doesn't notice because her eyes are closed, Reyes.
Yeah.
It's I don't know if I don't know how people become film writers and directors. But I would think if I was doing a scene like this, I would probably say, I'm making a movie, and I know this is crazy, but I know you're a therapist.
Right.
How do people learn to control their negative responses to things? And I don't think any therapist should say, you say control 6 times into an empty room and you're good. Yeah, it was a little strange. I mean, the scene is played for laughs too,
I guess. But
Ilyana's like smacking gum and rolling her eyes.
It does like make it continues the theme of everyone is bad at what they do.
Yeah.
Like, whatever Reyes is trying to do with these kids, they are bored and rolling their eyes and they do not care. And meanwhile, you just see a lot of screens that are like biometric scanning, where it's like beep, 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 like, oh, this person, they have psionic energy is whatever.
And the thing that doesn't even make more sense is like, so Essex is going to want to turn these people into his personal group of assassins. Right. Is kind of what you get.
Yeah.
And
they are not being trained for that at all.
They're not being trained for that. He's also not winning them over.
Right.
Which you could do easily by giving all of these kids like everything they want.
Yeah.
So I don't really get the, and maybe that's phase 2 that they head to next. I don't know. I don't know how long they're supposed to be there.
It's just not clear what they're supposed to be doing here. Because if what they're supposed to be doing here, according to Dr. Rain, is to like biometrically scan them all the time and have things happen, and then they use their powers, and so we figure out what their powers are. Except for Danny, we know what everybody's power is.
Yeah.
And we know that they suck at using it.
Yeah.
we're not training them to use it. Like, we know that Sam can't fly properly without breaking his own arm. We know that Berto like can flame up but doesn't want to. You're doing a terrible job at like, it's like either the thing that they're lying about or the thing that they're telling the truth about. Like, you're bad at all of those things. Yeah, and so they're all worried about like getting out of this facility and getting past Dr. Reyes, and it's like, dude, you are 5 super mutants.
Yeah,
and she is an annoying lady.
She's going to turn her back on you at some point.
Yeah,
leave.
And then so she goes to sleep, and what everyone does as a teen rebellion is they go upstairs to the attic to talk and play with a lie detector machine. So that they can do some character moments.
Yeah.
But so that's their teen rebellion.
I'm wondering now if the idea of them, like, there was the comic and then TV show of Runaways.
Yeah.
If that had kind of stolen whatever idea they could have had for New Mutants on the Run for this, or but it seems very clear that this is exactly what they wanted to do.
Yeah. Is keep people in this little hospital so they can have little character moments.
Yeah.
So they ask Danny about her little bear necklace. She has a little bear necklace carved out of I don't know what. And so they go upstairs as part of their teen rebellion. They just sit quietly in the attic and talk to each other. And she's like, my father used to tell me that inside every person there are 2 bears, which is not actually the case. And have like another variation on the bear proverb. This is like now the bears mean something different, where like there's the good bear that is nice and the bad bear that like it feeds on your fear. And she's like, so that's my dad made me this bear necklace so I would remember never to be afraid, which clearly did not fucking work because she's scared all the time.
Yeah.
And then they toss it to Sam. And Sam talks about being in the mine with his dad. And so there's that like teen rebellion. And then there's maybe one scene in the middle. And then it's another night. And Ileana spikes Dr. Reyes' tea. And they have like even more of a teen rebellion scene, which is the lamest one of all time. Like this montage of teen rebellion, which is basically cutting back and forth between 2 scenes. There's like Berto and Sam playing with the wheelchair, by which I mean like spinning around in a wheelchair in a hallway. And then there's Rain and Danny shaking a tambourine. Like this is a music dance experience. And like several shots of them just like standing there and like shaking a tambourine. And that's so much fun for them. These teens are terrible.
They're very bad at being teens.
They are.
I think the first thing they would have been doing is probably,
killing Dr. Reyes,
or at least doing the Velociraptor thing and testing the fence. Right. Yeah. I mean,
teleporting out,
doing something, anything
besides going and getting a tambourine.
Yeah. Sam, you seem to turn into an unstoppable object. Right. What happens when you slam against this thing? You seem to be able to melt anything in your path. Or why don't we all plan what we're going to do when the next time the delivery truck shows up, and then when it's coming in, we'll run out and run away because
you can burn shit. How about you just burn down the whole fucking place and then they can't keep us here?
Yeah.
Because there's no point because you've burned everything down. No, none of that.
No.
None.
They do introduce, when do they start introducing Ileana's background into this?
Oh, that's kind of later. That she got like gang raped by guys in smiley masks.
Yeah.
Is weird, which they don't really talk about very much.
And I don't know if that is not directly from the comics. And I think, at least from the period I was reading, I can't imagine they would have inserted that into to the comics. This was the first time when I was watching it this time that I noticed the that the guys in the masks look like lounge lizards. Like I didn't notice the like silk shirt.
Yeah.
With the like butterfly collar thing.
Yeah.
The first time because I was just so like, what is going on the first time I watched the movie.
Yeah. But we should talk about like these nightmare because then like so the horror movie aspect is just like we're in this really boring place with this boring woman who keeps saying the word control to us for no reason. But then there are actual horror scenes, which are kind of not really. You have to be very open-minded about your definition of horror to find this horrifying. But like various characters then throughout the movie get a vision of which doesn't do anything, but they get a vision of something that they're scared of. So for Sam, he goes back to the mine with his dad.
Wait, was Sam in a mine?
It's actually that is his backstory. He was in a mine with.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, no. They should have made that way more clear. So he has a mine thing, which is just another fucking mine story. And then what is it? And Ileana sees the smiling men who are like kind of monsters who raped her when she was a child. Unclear. And it turns out at the end that it's supposed to be, so this is the central mystery of the thing is what are Dani's powers? And it turns out that what her powers are is that she can give people these like nightmares of their worst fears. Although I have to say, they think about that all of the time. It's like Sam like giving him a nightmare about being with his dad in the mine is like he literally is thinking about that at every second. What are you doing?
So in the comic definition of Mirage's powers, or she could do two things. She could either show you your worst fear or your greatest desire.
Yeah.
So if like, you know, she wanted to dupe you into like just getting out of her way, there'd be an ice cream cone floating over somewhere and you'd be toddling off after it.
Yeah.
And it was an illusion. There's a reason her name is Mirage.
Yeah.
There was no like action. I mean, it was completely real to whoever was experiencing it.
Uh-huh.
But like that was where I got a little confused with this at first, just because of my knowledge of the comics was like you wouldn't actually be burned by the, you know, hot poker of
right. Yeah.
So
so Rain gets like a vision of the priest who burned her with a brand that says W, apparently for witch.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the vision, she gets burned again with a W. And then there's the pool scene, which is like, by the way, why aren't you guys hanging out in the pool all the time? That seems like the most fun thing that you could possibly do.
Least once a week now, we know there's a pool guy who should be coming and going.
That's true. Yeah, who does the pool stuff? Yeah, no one does anything at this place. So like Ileana and Berto like are in the pool and it's very confusing. But the point of the scene, which I totally agree with, is just to have Berto like take his clothes off and show us for the first time what that dude looks like naked, which is amazing.
I will say, and to put Anya Taylor-Joy or whatever her name is in
all sexy type.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a lot of other scenes, she's kind of acting like she's a kid. But in the pool scene, she's like, she's all up in like Berto. Okay, all right, I get that. And then, but it turns out that it's not actually Ileana, and he gets all heated. And then it's the girlfriend that he burned to death out in the outside who shows up, and she's all angry. And then he gets all freaked out, and now he's finally for the first time like using his powers, which like feels like a real scene. And then they push him into the pool, and the pool just like steams away. And so that's his nightmare, that like he remembers the girlfriend that he burned. Although, like
it also tells me the director has no concept of how heat works, but
Yeah, no, that is true. um, but like but he thinks about that all the time anyway.
Yeah.
He's constantly making reference to it. So like, I don't know why making that happen is such a big problem. But
I think the idea is supposed to be like they really think something is happening.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the idea of her, which, you know, I'm being very generous based on the comics, but
they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that they automatically forget that they're in a place full of mutants.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it seems in this movie that whatever's happening is really happening.
Yeah. But
which is not an amazing power. Like, like I couldn't ever figure out if, and I don't know if the movie ever made a decision about whether it was really happening or not.
That's true. Yeah, because Rain does get the brand on her neck, but nothing else really changes. Sam's like all those nightmares, like they don't actually connect to each other at all. It's just like every once in a while they do one because they want a scary thing. And the weirdest thing of all is that it turns out that is Danny's power. Like late in the movie, you find out that's Danny's power is she can create your worst nightmare. And they do it at a different point every single time. So like the first time, who is it the first? Oh, the first time is Sam with his mine nightmare. And that happens when Danny's asleep and has like the biometrics show that her psionic energy is peaking, whatever that means. But then all the other times she's awake. And at the time that Berto has his nightmare, Danny and Rain are outside, hanging out in the graveyard, and kissing for the first time. Like Danny's happy. That's the one moment when Danny's really happy, and it's then that Berto gets his nightmare. So what does that mean? And then the other time, like she gets some kind of drug and she's feeling all weird, and that's why Ileana has her nightmare. Like it's not actually connected to anything that Danny is doing or feeling at the moment. And
there was probably a way to have her be it more like the comics where you get whatever you. My dog just injured himself. You're a genius, dude.
Oh, like Sam.
He stuck his foot under the coffee table while he was getting up and scared himself. Yeah. But yeah, they could have done something, and they kind of did, where Berto was getting kind of his greatest desire, which at that point is physical contact with Ileana. But then they, of course, turn it into a nightmare, kind of out of, and I feel like
had they 80s horror movies where like being horny means you get killed,
right? And I kind of feel like had they just kind of carried that off and then had a confrontation scene between him and Ileana where he's like, no, we did it in the pool.
Right.
If he's denying it,
would have they drop it. They drop that completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know how this script got pulled together.
I know.
It just doesn't really add up. It's never scary. It's more this seems super inconvenient as things are happening. But the characters, because
this seems not efficient as a way to do this.
And they're not. It's one of the movies where they just can't. It's like when you watch a Superman thing and he doesn't remember he has heat vision.
Yeah.
Or cold breath or any of his dozen powers, and you're just like, but dude, you could do like you're.
Yeah.
And it constantly feels like that in this movie. If all of you can solve this with your amazing magical powers,
yes,
and you're choosing not to. And even when Rain drops out of the ceiling on Dr. Reyes, which they make a whole thing out of her in the tunnels, and then they do nothing with it.
Yeah.
All she does is kind of scratch her lightly. I'm like,
no, that's the thing. No, Rain actually kills her. Like Rain gives her the wounds.
I guess she does.
That ultimately kills her.
But I was like, you go for the gut, Rain. Like you go for the soft, part in the middle.
Yeah, she's hitting the head. Well, there's the truth serum thing or whatever. So like Dr. Reyes gives Danny some kind of like medication. We're not sure what's going on, and she's trying to talk about, I don't know, her powers. And then Danny, who is not psychic, has a vision of other kids in the other facility who are like in a danger room kind of, and who are getting dragged around. And I have to say, like, the other facility actually seems kind of nicer. That's like the nightmare thing that we're going to next. I'm like, well, at least they have the lights on.
I will say this. I was very confused. The first time I watched this, I thought this was how the hospital used to be. Yeah. And had like kind of dwindled down to this. And this time I got, oh, that's a completely different place. Mm-hmm. Wait, how does she know any of this? Like, it didn't.
But like, why? Yeah. Well, she gets this kind of like psychic vision somehow with her non-psychic powers. Mm-hmm. Of like, oh, at the other place they're doing bad things, and like we're getting prepared to go there.
Mm-hmm. I found the whole psychic vision thing very confusing and convenient.
Bizarre. Yeah.
It was her power was plot point, I guess, at that point.
Yeah. But now everybody realizes that she is that, like, they finally figure out that this is what's happening, is that somehow Danny, unintentionally, I suppose, when she's either sleeping or awake or angry or happy, is able
or on a stroll or
or what, like, under any circumstances, she can, for no reason, completely unconsciously, have no idea she's doing this, can manifest people's worst fears, which they look at for a while and does not actually hurt them, except for Rain, where it does. And so Dr. Reyes gets an email.
A very slow loading email with that.
Very slow loading. I know. Yeah, that's true. Like, it's a very weird technology where, like, she gets 3 sentences which are presented to her very slowly. And they say, so she gets this email that says like beep, 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 and there's a lot of beeps, so you know that it's like technological, where it says like subject presents extreme danger, and then I wrote this down: collect additional DNA samples, terminate subject. Which, like, that's good. That initiates the, third act, and now we know what's going on. But yeah, as a technology, it does not seem like an email. It's one of those things. It's like with Fantastic Four, where like they can't figure out what technology is like in this world. They don't know. This actually, it's a thing that, now I'm thinking about it, that they weren't sure about when they were making the movie. Of like, when does this take place? Is this like in the 80s? When, is this in like Days of Future Past? Like, I think they created it for one time period, and then I think X-Men Apocalypse didn't do well, and they said, okay, well, it's not that time period, and they put it into present day.
Yeah, they were going to do something where they were going to connect it somehow to that movie, and then decided not to. Why they decided it couldn't take place in the 80s, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess they wanted. Yeah, if they were going to do a sequel, I guess they wanted to connect it to the X-Men.
Yeah, I mean, the kids aren't worried about their devices. The only thing we know by this point is they have Buffy on DVD.
That is true. That's weird. Yeah, there's 2 scenes where we see clips of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't show a good movie inside your bad movie.
That's one of my rules.
That just makes it really makes you want to, like, and so they show Willow and Willow's girlfriend, whose name I can't remember, kissing, and that kind of foreshadows the Rain and Danny kissing, which is very nice. But then the second one is just like an action scene from a good episode.
Yeah.
Which is just like better than what we were, like, better than the action scene that we're about to have. Yeah, so that's a problem.
Yeah, and then you of course get lost. You start thinking about, well, why are they showing Buffy? Well, it's teens in a magical environment, and then it's like, well, there wasn't any actual connection other than, but I also lost a minute of your movie thinking about why you're showing Buffy.
Why you're showing Buffy, yeah, and how much I would rather be watching that episode of Buffy, which is actually a good episode. Yeah. But like, and there's one thing that's crazy, is that there's one moment where Berto is looking at a picture of his dead girlfriend, which is on his phone.
Mm-hmm. Right. So he has access to a phone.
He has a phone. But then, like, I don't think he puts it away or anything. It's just like, and then something else happens, and he just doesn't have it anymore. Like they don't have phones or something where they go like, oh, it can't, signal can't get through the dome or whatever. That feels to me like a scene from some other, like that's from the reshoots. That's from the thing that they wanted to do. I have no idea.
And how hard is it just to have him have a photo in a frame?
Yeah. Like Danny does at the very end.
Yeah.
Which is very funny. There's a thing at the very, very end where like stuff is destroyed and Danny comes across like a printed photograph, which she picks up off the ground in the rubble. And it's of her and her dad. And she smiles. And it's like, you didn't bring any possessions with you.
You were found in a tree.
You were found in a tree. Everybody, the entire reservation had been destroyed by you, by the way. Where did this photograph? It's like a Gilligan's Island photograph or something where it's just like, oh, it just happens to be exactly the thing I want to see, just standing right here in front of me. So Dr. Rain says, like, my superiors think that your powers can't be controlled, which we find out almost immediately. They absolutely can be controlled. So they're really bad at it. But she's going to, and so this is like the sad, sick moment of the movie is that like she is putting Danny down like a rabid dog, like a baby rattlesnake, and putting like giving her gas, and so she's gonna die. And so Rain, to save her, climbs through the vents in the wall and jumps down at her and turns into a dog and like bites her and scratches her. And Rain is the one with like the weakest powers of any of them. She's fine, but like of all of their powers, like she's the one who like, she's just a dog.
Sam could have we've seen him blow through walls.
Yeah. Berto can turn into a fire demon. And Ileana has a magic sword.
And it's not limited by time or space. Yeah.
Yeah. And so but Rain just like jumps on her head and then that's fine. And so like Dr. Rain like runs away with all these scratches on her head and eventually is going to die of that, more or less, or is going to be very injured. Meanwhile, the smiling men, the terrifying smiling men, have come for Ileana, and Ileana's like crying and like all sad, and she can't deal with this, and she teleports away, and that's supposed to be like the horror moment. Like everyone is really scared of these scary like smile, which like visually they look scary. I can see how they might be scary in a scary movie. But as soon as these kids use their powers for a second, they tear them all to pieces.
Yeah.
So like eventually Sam figures out, oh wait, I can use my cannonball powers, and he does that, and he just tears them apart. Berto could burn them if Berto decided to do anything useful. And Ileana, like she goes away for a minute, and then she comes back with her big ass scary sword and destroys them. So it's like, y'all, you are killer super mutants. Like, how are you scared? It's like, how are you scared of anything? How is this a horror movie? It's like a Nightmare on Elm Street from Freddy Krueger's point of view.
Yeah.
Like, no, dude, you don't get it. Like, you're the scariest person here. It's like Freddy Krueger is the one who's scared of all the people. It's like, dude, you're the scary one. Why is this a horror movie for you?
Yeah, and if they were trying to take the tone of the original comics, because we haven't even really gotten, the bear shows up, I guess, at this point, right?
Yeah, a little bit after this. Yeah. The bear shows up.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is you need to build a thing with the bear, which they don't really do.
I mean, she talks about bears a lot.
She talks about bears, but you don't see like a bear stalking her in the hall. You don't see the shadow of a bear.
No. Yeah, they do nothing. Yeah, she's fine.
And then
that's actually that's the craziest thing, is that like, so it turns out at the end that like the demon bear comes and eats Dr. Reyes, which would have been successful at some other point in the movie. And
they're all trapped in like Superman 3 bubbles.
Yeah.
And they can't suddenly use their powers or teleport away or in any way help themselves somehow.
Right.
And apparently Dr. Reyes is planning to hold them all there forever.
It's hard to say. Well,
Okay.
she's going to kill Danny. She's going to use that bubble and like keep all the air out. And so Danny kind of collapses, which brings on the bear somehow.
Yeah.
But she's like, there isn't anything. So she's supposed to be like the big bad of the movie, it turns out. So it's actually Danny's problem. But she never gets angry. Like there's nothing that builds up over the course of the movie where it's like Danny's getting frustrated or angry or something, and like the bear starts to come out or anything. She's just perfectly pleasant through the entire movie, and then all of a sudden she's unconscious, and the demon bear comes down and hunts them, and they're like, "Oh, it's hunting us!" Like, no, it's hunting Danny because it's her fear. So why is it hunting Danny? Like it is Dr. Reyes. So that's good. The force fields are down. The movie is over and they just won't accept it for like 10 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, they wanted to show the damn bear. And it just goes, like you said, it just kind of goes, they each get their shot at the bear, which is real or not real. It's not clear.
Right. So Ileana gets to like fight the bear with her sword, and Sam gets to fight the bear with his cannibal powers, and Rain turns into a dog and tries to fight it. And I'm like, would it help if we all just sat on the floor and said the word control for another 5 minutes? Like, would that do anything?
Well, isn't that not what Danny says to the bear at the end?
What?
Control?
Like, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And Berto is scared. He's like this scaredy cat, and that's supposed to be a thing. So they're all fighting the bear, and Berto's hiding. And Sam, this is amazing. Sam yells at him, "Berto, nut up," which is apparently all he needed.
Yeah.
To like get up and suddenly turn into terrifying flame monster and start beating up on this bear. And he's like, "Oh, that's the thing. Nobody ever told him to nut up before." That was Berto's problem through the whole movie. Dude, he just needed to nut up. If only Dr. Reyes had told him an hour and a half ago to nut up. Everything would be fine.
Oh my God. I found the ending both confusing and boring.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's because it's literally like shit is just happening on screen.
Yeah, and they just are fighting a bear.
Yeah, it's like, now there's a giant bear.
Yeah,
which we've heard bear references before. So now, of course, there's a giant bear because it was that or a mine was going to show up.
We have also, by the way, we have heard about 2 bears.
Yeah,
but I would like to point out. Yeah, there's the nice bear, there's the good bear, and then there's the bad bear. We only see one bear. And it wants to eat everybody.
And there could have easily been like, she's got to summon the good bear,
No.
It's
and you know what? I think actually, so we are not representing properly. I just realized that like people are listening to this episode who hopefully A, they're still listening, B, hopefully they haven't seen the movie. And it actually probably sounds like it's a regular bear, like it's size. No, it's a giant, enormous Stegosaurus shaped bear. It's huge.
It's something in any other movie I would have been delighted as hell to have seen.
Yeah. It's not a bad bear. It's a fine bear.
Yeah. It's in like a 50-foot tall bear?
Maybe.
I don't know.
I'm bad at math. Yeah. I don't know. But
it's a large bear.
It's a very large bear. It's like big bad movie ending giant bear.
Yeah.
You have to like punch and punch and punch and punch, and it kind of like gets hurt a little bit. And so Danny is unconscious and is like, "Oh, I can't help." And Rain is just yelling at her, like, "Danny, like, get up, wake up." And she doesn't until she gets a pep talk from her dad. Danny, as the main character, Danny does nothing useful in the entire movie. There isn't a single action that she takes that helps at all.
Yeah, and my unlocking of that was like, okay, when you're reading the comic, she is literally on a hospital bed, passed out for 4 issues. Yeah,
Jesus.
And so I was like, oh, okay. So this must have been where they took this from.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work as a movie.
No. I'm actually surprised that even works as a comic.
Spoiler, it does not.
Yeah.
It's very
like your
bad.
Your main character is like through the entire thing. The main character has been Danny. Apparently, has been like driving the plot and driving a lot of the horror stuff, but she's completely not aware of it.
Yeah.
And then at the end, she has to be unconscious for 10 minutes while everyone else nuts up and fights the giant bear. And so like the big heroic action that she takes, which they all congratulate her on afterwards, is to wake up and figure out how to stop torturing her friends. And everyone's like, you're a hero, you saved us. Like from her.
Yeah.
He saved you. Everyone is so bad. There is not a single effective character in this whole group of people. But so she wakes up at the last second, obviously, because it's a movie countdown. At the last second, she wakes up and she says to the bear, "Control," which is possibly one of the worst moments in movie history. It's bad for cinema, that moment. It's bad on an epic level. But like, so the entire thing that Dr. Reyes was supposed to do was to figure out, like, either in the good side of what was supposed to be happening was teaching her how to control her powers, which she clearly can do, or she has to kill her because she can't control her powers, which she clearly can do. So once again, everything that everyone tries to do in this movie, completely unsuccessful. And so like, and she's basically is just like, hey, bear, what about my friends? What about love? And then she says, control. And it's like, what was this movie about? What was it actually about?
I was at such a loss. Yeah.
So much of this episode is me in pain. We have to advertise it like that. when we put out this episode, of just like, I am just in pain this entire time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a movie that when you're watching it on kind of first blush, as I did whenever it first came out on HBO Max, and I was like, okay, it's kind of dull. It's really dull. I'm bored. The characters are kind of only interesting because they are live action versions of a thing I liked when I was 12.
Yeah.
And then I think I must have opened my computer or started looking at my phone, which is kind of what I tend to do when movies start to get dull.
Yeah.
Because I don't really remember how it's stitched together for the last third. And rewatching it this time was when I really realized, like,
it doesn't.
This is an incompetently assembled movie. It didn't have a good script to begin with.
And this is a movie that, like, they looked at it, didn't like it correctly, and they were going to reshoot half the movie.
Yeah.
And add more characters. Like, part of the idea was they were going to add a totally different character and put them in there and reshoot half the movie. But like a year later, they couldn't figure out what they were going to reshoot or not. And Disney released it.
Well, they dumped it. I mean,
they dumped it. The amazing thing about the release is they released it August 28th.
2020.
2021.
I thought it was 2020.
Is that right?
Because it was supposed to come out. It was supposed to come out April 3rd of 2020.
Yeah.
And I remember everyone was kind of like hemming and hawing in the geekosphere about, like, this looks real iffy, because it had already been pushed back like a year and a half at that point.
Yeah.
And so everyone's like, we got to go let's go like chuckle at New Mutants, because this is going to be a train wreck.
Yeah.
And then COVID happened. And then, what I felt bad for was Bill Sienkiewicz was kind of like, no, guys, I've seen it. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. And it finally came out.
They put it out theatrically.
And it was one of the first things to really come out.
Yeah. It was
months.
the summer that nobody went to the movies.
Yeah.
And
it tanked. I mean,
it tanked. Like,
yeah.
But it would have tanked.
It was absolutely.
COVID actually, like the pandemic actually, I think was good for this movie's reputation because at least people can say, "Oh yeah," but it came out like the first summer of COVID. But it would have been a problem anyway.
Yeah, I couldn't believe I was like, just mercy kill, just put it out on HBO or something. Like, do not put it out in the theater. I guess they were trying to get whatever dollars they could inject it, which I kind of understand and appreciate, but
so here we are.
Yeah, I mean,
here we are with this movie.
And you're coming off of X-Men Apocalypse, which had been just fucking brutal. Like I've never been more like disgruntled watching a movie than I think X-Men Apocalypse. And then I just skipped Dark Phoenix because I had hit the like I'm done with this franchise.
Right. Everybody else did as well. Yeah.
And then this thing was coming, and I was like, "Look, guys, I understand the idea of we're going to make a horror movie, but the thing you were supposed to have done is make your Vampire Academy or whatever out of this, because New Mutants was ground zero for that concept."
Yeah.
Like, you don't have a Vampire Academy. You don't have any of this goofy bullshit that is like fills YA shelves without New Mutants.
Right.
And they could have done this as a like, here's teens falling in love, and they also have powers, and there's a rival school, and it made it like colorful and fun, and you could have had Ileana exactly how she is in this movie. You could have all of these same actors play all of these characters, with Professor X like yucking it up with the kids and them actually, which they've established across like 5 X-Men movies by this point.
Yeah.
It's like, look, this is a group of them who are actually like not just going to school. Like they're going to have an adventure or
different experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just not that effing hard. And I don't understand what was going on at Fox at this point where they were like,
the craziest thing is like his concept, Boone's concept, which he sold from the beginning. And then, they felt a little weird about it, and they kind of like went back and forth on it. But the concept, like the elevator pitch, is New Mutants as a horror movie where the kid mutants are being terrorized. They're locked in a hospital and they're terrorized. That's the whole thing.
Who is that for?
Well, just more, I feel like more fundamentally, like, does that work? Like, there's 5 kids with superpowers. Like, you can't. And so the whole thing was like his vision. Like, let's get to his vision, which is so exciting, about doing New Mutant specifically as a horror movie specifically. And it's like, you can't. I feel like it proves you can't do a horror movie where the victims are super mutants. Not because like it's, I'm thinking in a too like limited way or whatever. Like, it's not because like, it's just nobody ever tried this fresh new take on superheroes. It's like, it literally doesn't make sense that if you have the power to burn anything, putting you in a haunted house is not scary.
Right.
Straight up. Like, that's just, you don't need me to tell you that.
Yeah.
That's clear from the movie.
Yeah. And I get the, like, even if you wanted to do it of what is it like to be a nurse or a janitor at the X-Men Academy
where it's actually terrifying for that person.
Yeah, that would make way more sense to me than what they tried to do. And it feels like a misreading of what happens in the comics, or they just like glanced at it and were like, oh yeah, we can kind of borrow from that.
There probably is like a way, there are probably characters you could figure something out where it would make sense to take a Marvel Comics character and have them be in a Stephen King movie. But this is not it.
No.
Because you can't treat superheroes this way and expect them, like, they're just too powerful for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing of horror movies is you are squishy and
Right,
easily
yeah.
destroyed.
Yeah. You walk into a haunted house and you're the victim.
Yeah. And
And they're super not. They're way scarier. Ileana at one point brags about killing 18 people.
yeah.
And for one thing, she gets mad when she finds out that like Essex Corp is trying to turn her into a killer. And it's like, dude, that's exactly the thing you bragged about, was that you killed 18 people, for one thing. But also, like, you've killed 18 people and you're still fucking crazy, clearly.
Yeah.
How is Dr. Reyes on her own, who is like, yeah, on her own, somehow terrorizes you when you have 4 other people who could just kill her, which is what happens? It doesn't make
right. No.
can't
That was
figure it
where
out.
last night when I was watching, I was like, or Friday night, I was like, none of this holds together. There's just absolutely nothing here that makes any sense
Yeah.
to make for a satisfying viewing. I can't figure out how it got past.
Yeah. It didn't. Is
Yeah.
the idea. Like, it didn't.
Right.
They made it, and
They
then
knew that they needed to
they
remake
thought,
it.
yeah, they thought that they were going to remake it, and then they got sold to Disney, and Disney's like, what are we going to do with this mess?
Yeah.
And honestly, like, they had a choice where they could have just said, this is a write-off, we're not doing this, but they were like, fine, just finish the movie.
Well, the nerds would have blown it up into being this like 20-year thing of
Oh,
would have
you're
been
right,
documentaries about
it would have been the
and-
Justice League. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. It would have
yeah.
been the Zack Snyder oh god,
Yeah.
that's hilarious. They actually then, oh my god, I never realized this before, but they are in a world now, because of Zack Snyder's Justice League superhero movies. Now it is impossible to drop the bad movie.
Yeah.
Like, if it's in production and it's not working, you're right, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Because they'll be all like you'll have a whole other like Snyder bro problem.
Yeah, you
and
will.
So they had to put it out. And
they had to clear everything, because they are going to eventually, one way or another. And my personal feeling is they should never launch the X-Men within the MCU. Like
no, they need to.
Well, I think they need to have a new X-Men series, but I don't think they should ever connect it, because I mean, there's a reason Marvel themselves have like twice tried to split off the X-Men from the rest of Marvel.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make any sense within the rest of Marvel.
Definitely at this point, like, yeah, the X-Men in the MCU, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. And I think it's possible that they'll pull them from an alternate universe, because you can't have like the 15 years of MCU story time where mutants exist and no one's ever noticed a single one.
Right. Yeah.
So that is a thing. And I think probably that's part of why they're doing the multiverse stuff, is so that they can like pull X-Men.
Well, it doesn't make sense in a world where kids, and this is never from when I was a child and started reading comics, I didn't understand how you had fear of mutants, but then you had people love Thor and Captain America.
Right. Like,
whatever.
you've heard of superheroes. Yeah. But
yeah, it's like it's all a continuum, especially if it turns out anyone at any day could pop up and become a superhero just because of a genetic misfiring.
Yeah.
So I think that they need to keep it separate. I think that they were probably just, I don't know, I can't remember. I guess the wasn't restore the Snyderverse back then, but whatever it was back then, the hashtag, probably they saw that on the wall and get a little cash, I guess, during all this. Can't hurt. Just release the movie. Let it just be whatever.
Just put it on HBO Max.
Yeah. And you know,
and honestly, like, I think this movie, it's like the pandemic is the kindest thing that could have ever happened to this movie.
Yeah.
Because they got to put it out. It did not make any money. But everyone could say like, pandemic.
Yeah.
And then they just put it on HBO and forget about it.
Yeah.
Never talk about it again.
And it's having the existence it should have had. It's a minor movie that wasn't very good, that a few people will have watched to be completionists. And
although now that we're talking about it, I think it's hilarious. That's the problem. I'm a little bit incepted by this movie.
I will never watch this movie again.
Oh,
I can't
what about little
imagine.
Sam though? What about his minds? Sam in the mines.
I can't.
You feel nothing for that. Wait, hold on.
No.
I'm going to say something, and look inside your feelings.
Okay.
All right. Sam's dad made him work in a mine, and they had to mine coal, and he gave him a little piece of coal so that he would remember forever. It was a souvenir so that he would always remember his time in the mine. And then he got claustrophobic, and he used his powers, and he killed everybody.
But see, to me,
that does not touch you.
That's associated with what I know about the character from comics when I was like 12.
No, but he had like a piece of coal in his pocket.
He still carried with him. Well, the thing is, they could have even done something in the movie with the piece of coal, like he needed to ignite it to do something.
No,
they didn't.
It's a happy ending, by the way. Did we tell everybody? There's a happy ending.
They have to walk 20 miles to go somewhere.
Yeah, they killed Dr. Reyes, but it's like, hey, now we're free because she's dead and there's no dome and the bear doesn't exist.
Morals don't exist. Nothing exists. Nothing matters.
It's a sunny day, and the five of them just start walking. And that's the happy ending of the movie.
Yeah. I believe
that feels they were like they did not. I mean, partly that's because they wanted to do a sequel, but it does not follow through on the horror thing. Like, oh, this is going to be a horror movie.
So
where, at the end of the movie, all five good characters are alive and fine.
Yes, because they were planning 2 more movies. There is a character named Warlock who was in.
He's like the robot-y guy.
He's the robot-y guy.
Who was invented by Bill
Sinkovich.
There you go. See, this is how I do it.
Yeah.
I don't ever have to pronounce the name.
And the idea he pops up during the Demon Bear saga, but it's in that like this is happening on the other side of the galaxy. Yeah. And this is how Claremont would do things. He'd start dropping like what was going to show up in 5 issues.
Right.
Well, whatever you were reading. And so there's like these crazy looking space things that are like fighting on an alien planet and one's running away from the other. And so the story of Warlock was he lands on Earth and he befriends the New Mutants. In particular, one of the characters who I don't know when he shows up, but his name was Cypher because his power was he could automatically understand all languages, and he would have been a great programmer.
Yeah,
and he anyway. The Magus is the father of the Warlock, and the species entire thing. I'm trying to remember things from when I'm like 12, 13. Is the father and son fight, and then one of them survives, and then another one is created, and then it starts all over again. And Warlock is a mutant because he doesn't want to fight. So he is mutated.
Okay.
And so they make him a mutant anyway, blah, blah, blah.
And they wanted him to be in this movie.
And they wanted people to be able to draw this crazy thing in New Mutants. And various writers had various levels of success because he was an incredibly annoying character. And it was part of why when I wrote my 3-page letter, he
would have been perfect. He would have been another annoying character. He would have been perfect.
Well, so they were going to do the second movie about Warlock as a space invasion horror movie.
Very well.
And then the third movie was going to pick up with Ilyana's stuff, eventually spiraled out into an event the summer of, I think, my 8th grade year, which was something called Inferno, where all of the demons from the limbo dimension where she goes to, which they show briefly here, spill out into, I can't remember if it was New York or Houston. For some reason, I think it might have been Dallas.
Yeah.
I remember there was stuff happening in Dallas, which blew my mind because I was living in I live in Texas, and it was just like, oh my God, they're actually acknowledging that like flyover country exists in a comic. But anyway, they were going to do that for the third movie. And of course, this completely tanked. The thing is, they would have been like really escalating the budget from movie to movie to movie.
Yeah. And
I don't know if they'd been on this budget, what any of that would have looked like.
That was not in the cards.
Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing is that they just gave up on the movie like 2 years before the movie came out.
Yeah.
They just all went and worked on different things.
Yeah.
And then like they told Josh Boone, to like come back and finish it. But so we need to talk about our destiny.
Okay.
You and me, because clearly, like, we have survived this movie, right? We survived the demon.
Sure.
We're walking through the gates. The dome is gone. We are no longer trapped with this movie. The next town is 20 miles away. Clearly, you and I, our upcoming trilogy is another shitty Marvel movie. I'm looking at Blade Trinity. I'm looking at Elektra.
Oh man.
I'm looking at Jonah Hex.
Oh man, you're just trying to kill me.
We're gonna have to figure this out. You and I are gonna figure this out.
I have seen all of those movies.
They're great, right?
One of them I saw in an airplane, which was the only way to being trapped at several thousand feet above the ocean.
I'm looking at Steel.
Steel is amazing.
There you go. All right. So people need to stay tuned, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we haven't also mentioned. I've never seen Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, nobody has. That's the least surprising thing you could possibly say.
I don't know who's in it. I don't think Famke Janssen is.
Lady.
So
yeah.
But anyway,
we will see.
Yeah. All right. Well, tune in for the next exciting installment of Danny and Ryan visit non-MCU Marvel movies, I guess. And
just to prove how good the MCU is, we're going to watch all the alternatives and how terrible they are.
God, yeah. Have you ever seen the David Hasselhoff Shield movie?
Now I want to.
It's
there we go. The one thing that we can't do, I'll tell you though, there's one place that's my nightmare that we can't go is the Inhumans. Because I watched the first 15 minutes of that, and I watched the entire thing. I don't know why. It's hard. It's real hard. We might have to actually do that now. I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
All right, we'll get there. Episode by episode, though. We got to do like 6 podcasts about it. All right. Anyway,
all right.
Go and visit Superheroes Every Day if you want more.
Right.
Superhero movie comedy. And thank you for listening to this ridiculous conversation.
Yeah, and don't watch New Mutants if you haven't, or do. Yes,
I don't know what to recommend to people at this point.
I'm lost. Yeah, it's all a haze at this point. There are 2 bears inside you.
Yeah, there are. We're listening. Oh my God, that's right. We're listening to the bad bear. We're telling people. The good bear is telling you don't watch New Mutants. The bad bear is like, but how bad could it be? Don't feed the bad bear.
Don't feed the bad bear.
Don't feed the bad bear. That is our message.
That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed the podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. We'd love to hear from you, so find us online and let us know what you think. Whether you prefer email, blog comments, or social media, we'll be happy to hear from you. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies, you've got to be kind.